Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Produced by Barber and Star Fox Radio. My creatures of the night. Yes, again, it is Camp Nightmare Fuel time on LordeStarfox Radio. If you have been keeping up with this epic little podcast that Barb and I have been working on, you will have seen the previous content that is pretty gnarly. And now we've added Mr. Barber as our third host. He, as far as I know, has been in every one of our episodes anyhow. So it only makes sense to bring him around the good old table. Tonight, we are going to be talking about giant anaconda sightings all across the globe and even potentially here in the good old US of A. Yeah, you heard that right. Yet before we start diving into all of this, we of course are going to touch base with our epic hosts and see how they have been. Barb, what have you been up to?
Hey, I've been doing well, just being busy with some property that we bought on the Olympic Peninsula, and it's in Washington State. It is so active here, and I know that people have said that it's like famous, I guess you would say, among Bigfoot researchers, because it's so active everywhere, and that's what I'm finding. So that's what I've been doing. How have you been, Kevin?
Excellent stuff right there. And yes, to the audience, I talk to Barb pretty much daily. Her property is absolutely epic. We did have a little conversation about potentially exploding dishwashers, but it does sound as if you are still clicking around quite well. So this is
not happen. It is a farce. It says it's not suitable for that. And I'm like, this is so dumb. I'm going to do it. And then Kenny was like, your dishwasher is going to explode. Because I'm like, what's the harm? But you know what? It didn't. It was fine.
That's so funny. Yeah,
I'm excited that we're having Brian join us. I mean, I say on a permanent basis, but you're right. Like, Brian has been in every single one of these episodes, so of course he should be.
Only makes sense, right?
Yeah. Yes. Brian, how have you been? What have you been up to?
I've been busy, pull 6 days at the gym because everybody's looking for their summer bodies and digging all the Bigfoot equipment out, getting ready for the season. So we got the holiday weekend coming up. Got a nice light week this week, so hopefully get out and get some stuff set up and squatches be willing, have a little fun. And I'm drooling all over poor little Barber because the thought that you are out on the Olympic Peninsula.
Right, Brian, it's you guys, it's crazy. Like, I don't know. I'll just briefly, the last 2 nights, about 9 o'clock, the first night I hear what sounds like a child, like, hysterically crying, but it didn't go on. It was just like a quick, this sound, and then it stops, and then there's nothing else. So we're like, oh, what if it is a kid? First of all, there's no way that it would be a kid where the sound was coming from. All right. So then last night I hear about the same time this thing that sounds like a woman screaming, but like the creepiest, most almost like demonic And that was real quick. And then nothing else. So whoa. Just that is crazy.
Yeah, everybody talks about Salt Fork lately, but Olympic Peninsula has been so active for so long. It's like that's the gold standard.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll tell you, I just it is I would agree. So
Do they have bobcats there?
Yes, yeah, but and that's the thing. It could be a bobcat, could be a cougar. I know it's definitely not a cougar. And I'm not sure about a bobcat though, because I know what they sound like, but they make different sounds though, right? I mean, it's not just like this one sound. They make different sounds, and they do have tendency to sound like a baby or a woman. So good, could be.
Yeah, if you just heard that on a consistent basis, you would think bobcat. But if you're hearing different noises,
Yeah.
the chances that the bobcat in your area happens to be the Jeff Dunham of bobcats, forget it.
Yes. Yeah. Good point. Anyway, he only goes on for 1 minute every night. Not even a minute.
Yeah,
Just a little quick verbalization, and then that's over. Show's over. Same time tomorrow night. With a whole different sound for you.
Peanut one night, Walter the next. Ahmed's coming up.
Yeah. Yes. So last night I put out a handheld recorder. And it should have gone for 10 hours. I have to like download, the results. So I haven't even looked at it yet because I'm kind of like excited. And I know that's going to take a while for me to get all the, the data off of that. And then I can see if I have anything. So anyway, that's what's
okay. I got to ask, did you intentionally buy property there for squatches?
No, but it was a huge factor. we started coming to this place in 2014 when we first moved here. So to Washington State, and absolutely love it because it's really this like idyllic little beach coastal town set really high up on like a 100-face cliff. But there's really cool various ways to get down to the beach, and it's just a really deep sandy beach. Like it's deep from where the water starts, even for high tide. So that's definitely, it's just absolutely beautiful here. And then when they opened this new part of it, and I'm like, oh, what's that? I'm like, oh, well, that's DNR land. And here's a trail that is through DNR. And I'm like, wow, that's cool. And that was the day, Brian, I think you saw this footage. That was the day I'm sitting in my husband's truck and I'm taking a video, and I'm like, what is going on? And it's pouring rain. And I'm like, what is going on? And it looked like this person was like walking down through these pines in front of me, but there's no hill there. And so like, how is this thing moving? And then I realized it could be like swinging on the trees.
Oh.
So yeah. So I thought you saw that. If not, I'll have to show you. But anyway, yeah. So this is the place. I mean, like that's like right, let's say 100 feet from me, where I was sitting in the truck that day. So
that'll make you grip the steering wheel tight.
Yeah. So that was a definite, it was a definite factor. I feel like it was a sign,
Yeah. How could you pass that up?
Yeah. So.
No, pretty bizarre stuff right there. Just be careful. Like I said, I'd prefer not to be covering a episode of Camp Nightmare Fuel with just Mr. Barber and myself as to where Barb has disappeared to.
Exactly.
Yes, I definitely don't want that to happen either. I can assure you. And I'll tell you, I would be out there a lot more. I would probably be out there every day, like for most of the daylight hours as I could. But that's not safe for me to do that, because my husband's here at the house working, and he works from here, or he's, doing the various things that we're doing. And so, he's not able to be with me. And it's like, I don't feel comfortable in a lot of those places that I walk through,
Well, yeah, like I said, would definitely not be preferring to add you to the good old statistic numbers for sure. Just be happy that it is only Sasquatch, meaning not giant snakes, that we are
Right.
going to be diving into, because again, I think spiders are pretty cool. I have no problem with snakes. I still wouldn't really want to be that close to one of these beasts. I was watching a great documentary the other night called The Giant Anacondas of Ghana, or I believe that's how you pronounce that. You're like, look at the size of the freaking head on that thing. Straight up gnarly stuff for sure.
And this one touches my heart because I used to raise reticulated pythons and Burmese pythons. So this one, I was so glad to get the invitation for this one. And thank you for bringing me on, by the way. And Barb, yes, please don't bring me on to be the third member. And then the next episode, we have to do it in memoriam of.
No.
Wouldn't be very good right there.
No, giant snake stuff's been around quite a while, and with the internet now we're hearing more and more about where they are, and people are starting to infringe deeper and deeper. And the things you always have to remember with snakes is, they're cold-blooded, so they got to have the perfect environment.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that as long as they have indeterminate growth, so they're going to grow as long as they can get the food and the temperature right. As long as they live, they will grow. That's why they shed their whole life. And I had an 18-footer, and I'll tell you what, when you're in a 15-foot room and you let an 18-foot, 200-pound reticulated python out, it's quite a sight. And would I ever do it again? No. I was so young and dumb, and I should have had somebody put a foot in my butt so hard that the crack would be something that Moses would have been proud of, because handling an 18-foot snake is not smart.
Brian, so I can't even imagine. So
3 rabbits a month.
Walk us through worst case scenario. So you're 18, 20, is that what you are? Like when you own this, when you're doing
When
this?
I owned the snakes, yeah, I was 22.
Okay, so you go into this 15-foot room and the 200-pound reticulated python, you're holding it, and it's like gonna unfurl or whatever to 18 feet. Walk us through that, but like worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario is you're doing it alone, which I did.
Yeah.
Because you have no help, and you will not, I don't care how big and bad you think you are, you will not, if it gets more than one coil around you, it's lights out.
Oh my.
And sometimes if you're handling it, it might feel like if it's half on the cage and half you, it'll throw a couple coils because it doesn't want to fall, because they're so heavy bodied. They could break ribs just very easy. And I actually had it where I always fed it at one end of the cage. We're talking a room-sized cage. And whenever I went to handle it, because they get used to patterns and people, so you feed it at one end, and then you open for cleaning and maintenance and handling at the other end. And I always gave it a pat with a long golf club or something, so it knew it wasn't food. But one time I went to put the snake away, and I hadn't locked the feeding end. Well, it figured it out, and as it was going in, it threw a coil around my leg and dragged me through the cage and through the bedroom and down the stairs with it.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Broke my forearm falling down the stairs. I got a nice scar on it from my left arm from that snake, because when it bites, the first thing you have to do is keep your calm, because the snake's teeth are recurved like fish hooks in their mouth. So you have to actually grab the snake behind the head, push forward. So you're pushing your arm down the snake's throat to pry up to get the teeth out.
Gosh.
20 stitches to close them up. And that was a quick bite, let go.
Oh my gosh.
Ouch.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying right there.
And rabbits, used to feed it by, frozen rabbits, and it would eat 5 or 6 a month, and we're talking 4 or 5 pound rabbits, so big rabbits. And you wouldn't even see the bulge in it. I hate to say this because I feel horrible about it to this day. I used to have 2 cats at one point, and when I came home one day, only one cat came and greeted me. And I'm like, what the heck? And I go
Um,
upstairs, and sure enough, when the snake got out, it always headed to my bed for the electric blanket. And there's the snake laying in my bed, and in that snake, there's a nice little bulge that I can only assume was the cat because I never did see it again.
oh no, that's so terrible.
So giant snakes are right up my alley. Now I can't go into, I raised them, I never bred them, so I can't get into the scientific details for the perfect temperature for breeding and all that. But I know enough
Yikes.
to really enjoy the reality of what it takes because, like I said, if you want them to get big, you just keep cramming food.
Makes
You know,
sense.
you and
Yeah,
they say, and they're easier to handle because they're full, they're happy. If you want to
right.
keep them smaller, you don't give them as much food, but then they tend to get snappy.
Mm-hmm.
And if you
Wow.
got even a 6 foot snake will tear you up. So you don't really want snappy ones, which is
Yes.
where when you get into the anacondas, um, the green is actually the most docile, believe it or not, even though it does tend to make people disappear. The hardest part for the snake is getting the mouth around the shoulders.
Wow.
Yeah. Really great stuff right there. Well, to the audience, what we're going to do before we allow Brian to start diving into some more stuff is Brian is going to cover a case that is very infamous. I am going to cover something, and then Barb is going to, well, talk about some very interesting and creepy footage that has been sent to her. Before, though, we allow Brian to dive into this case, is there anything else Barb would like to ask him about what we just heard?
No, I mean, like, I have a bunch of questions, but we'll just have to talk about it afterwards or another time because I have so many questions.
Yeah, the snakes are way more intelligent than people give them credit for. They get into patterns, they get into habits, they recognize individuals, depending on the snake, the more intelligence they have. If you've never had a chance to see a king cobra in person, I've had the chance to do it one time. They are a thinking snake. You can look into their eyes and there's just something different. You can see what's going on. Anacondas and reticulated pythons are the two. Uh, People always kind of get this confused. Anaconda is technically the largest snake in the world because it's the heaviest. The reticulated python is the longest because we're talking 33 feet
Yes.
being the longest. But the anaconda is technically the largest because of the heaviest. Over 400 pounds, I believe, was the record.
Yeah, it's like the Kodiak bear, polar bear conversation. Yes.
Yeah. So, and again, the record to this point that's recognized is a 30-foot reticulated python. Now, in 1959, it sounds like in the Congo, that record could very well have been challenged if they could have caught this snake. So, like I said, we'll turn the clock back to 1959. Colonel Remy van Leerde of the Belgian Royal Air Force, very well recognized man, not known to mess around too much, not a prankster or anything like that. He and 2 other people, he was trained to, finding people from the helicopter very well as far as distance measurements. He claims to have been particularly proficient at being able to tell how far away something is or how long something is, how tall it is, and had flown over 400 and some missions, I believe. So over the Kataganga region in Congo, they were flying again with 2 people, and the co-pilot happened to point out and exclaim, something to the effect of, "What was that?" in the PG-13 version. And there appeared to be a giant snake on the ground. And they flew over several passes. So again, we got 3 people looking at it. The snake was about 50 feet long. And they made several passes. And at one point, Van Leerde even said that the snake reared up, up what he estimated was 10 feet, like it was ready to strike. And most snakes can lift up about a third of their body off the ground. Some snakes a little more, but most of them are about a third. So if you got a 50-foot snake, as he proclaimed, then yeah, that's definitely a possibility. And then he came to his senses and realized, hey, I probably shouldn't get too close to this thing. He estimated the head was 3 feet wide by 2 foot long, big jowls, like a arrow-shaped head. So he made his report, did take a picture. 1980 was when he told his stories. They showed the picture. History was made there. Now, the thing was, people challenged him on that. And it seems to have gained a lot of traction lately. There seems to be a lot of people in the last couple of years making videos about this thing. The problem is the picture that is being circulated is not the true picture. You sent me a video, about a guy who was, I believe he was he was definitely from YouTube, but from Reddit, who was proclaiming this was a worm or a smaller snake. It wasn't accurate. And the problem is the picture he was looking at isn't the real picture. It is actually a picture zoomed in of a picture. The true negative of that picture was sent in by the pilot, Mr. Van Leerde, to be examined, and he never got the negative back. So the picture does show a lot more background, but everybody zoomed in on the snake. So you're getting people thinking it's a small snake, it's a worm. The guy tried to debunk it. And there's actually footage out there. It came to light that a guy was out there the next day. I can't remember his name, but he actually took color footage of the area the snake was in. But the problem is it's locked away in the archives in Sweden. Nobody's able to get access to it for some reason. So it's going to be one of those things that is going to remain a mystery to that point, because that color footage would give the exact details you need to estimate the snake by measuring the trees around it and things like that. As of, let's see, it was 4 years ago that somebody started looking on Google Earth. After, I forget how long he was looking, a year, maybe more, found what is either the location or close to the location on Google Earth. Now, obviously, after 65 years, the area is going to change a little bit, but they did lay a composite over, and it looks pretty close. And I sent you a letter from this analyst, and what that letter says is, by the estimates, is $1 million question. The smaller tree and mound could be anywhere 3 to 12 feet tall if the snake is under 50 feet. Now, what he did was he measured the trees, two trees standing side by side, and he used another tree. And depending on the measurement of the trees determines the measurement of the snake. The closest estimate so far, about 15 meters. So you're talking roughly 49 feet. But depending on how tall the tree is, so the guy wasn't lying. And the people that are trying to drag him down, the more the people analyze this picture and see the actual picture itself and not the picture of a picture, and are able to make estimates on those trees, it's looking like it's anywhere roughly between 40 feet and 48 feet. And it's really weird because of where it's at, which is in the Congo. Now, you've got Africa's known for the African rock pythons. And from the way he described the snake with a pattern on the upper body with a white belly, if you look at the picture, you mess with the contrast, you can see somewhat of a pattern on it that is similar to a rock python, but it's not quite the same. But most snakes do have like a white belly with dependent on the snake. Most pythons, like your reticulated's got a white belly. Your Burmese is kind of a tan. So under duress, like they were, like I said, I kind of freak out thinking about how close I came to another world with an 18-footer. So imagine seeing something at 50 feet in the wild. A wild caught snake is nothing you want to mess with. Even a 6-footer is going to mess you up. So there's still a mystery as to how big the snake is, but current data is pointing anywhere from, uh, you know, somewhere between 32 and 48, with most guesses being between 40 and 48. Barb, are you a snake person? What do you think about a 48-foot snake coming up into the Olympic
Well,
Peninsula?
I can't even think about that. Like, I can't. That is one of the scary. I really can't. That's like one of the scariest things. I'm not really like afraid of snakes, except if they're venomous. And I mean, I guess I should be more concerned about the ones that are going to try to squeeze me. But I don't know. Like, they don't scare me just as much as the ones that are going to, bite you. Oh, I wanted to say that I think what you were talking about, the British television series that covered it, was Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World. And it aired
That's the one.
It aired in 1980 in the episode titled Dragons, Dinosaurs, and Giant Snakes. Yeah, and then they talk about it. And it seems like it, hey, it seems like it's legit. It really
Well,
does.
and the crazy thing is, all the videos that you see relating to this are getting millions and millions of views, but that
Yes,
particular video has less than 3,000 with the true
that's
story in it.
whoa, that is bizarre.
Yeah, I think it's another one of those things where you want to kind of bury that truth, because all of a sudden you're going to get people invading that territory looking for.
Mhm.
I mean, look at how many people look for them now. Now imagine if there's actual proof.
Yeah. Wow. A snake that could rear up like 10 feet. That is just terrifying. Jeez.
Yeah, and basically that would be almost just lifting its head a few feet off the ground, because
Yeah.
a king cobra gets, a big one's about 18 feet, and when
Mm.
it comes up, it can almost look you in the eyes at 6 feet.
Whoa. Ugh.
So talk about nightmare fuel of a.
That is for sure. I have friends that they are so afraid of snakes, literally cannot even speak about a snake around them. Like, don't even, they get mad if that's how terrified they are of the subject of snakes. So this is just some nightmare fuel tonight.
Yeah, my mom's like that. She didn't come to my house for the 7 years I had my snakes.
Wow.
But you hit on a point. I didn't really think about somebody burying the truth on a snake, but I actually think there's more to it like that, because you hear about giant snakes in South America, you hear about them in South Africa, Indonesia, and places like that. But the only place where you don't hear about giant snakes is the Congo. Yet this is where this is once from. So why aren't more reports coming out of there, unless somebody's trying to keep it under wraps?
Boom. Epic stuff right there. I just have a couple quick questions before I allow Barb to ask any more questions about that encounter, before I potentially stir the pot a little bit. Brian, why do you think people are saying the camera he claimed to have used or was using is not the correct camera? I believe it was either the location or the time supposedly he submitted was incorrect. What do you feel about that?
I know the camera was different, and I'm just wondering, if you flew over 400 times, if you're even sure of all your equipment all the time. Camera
Right.
maybe got switched out. And as far as location, there's been two distinct locations that were put out. Like you said, you already pointed out the camera was off. We do know that person went back to the exact coordinates he gave, and the next day and got the color footage. Unfortunately, we don't get to see it. So, and as far as the satellite photo went, they do think it might be a different area, but it's so similar, it's ridiculous. But it
Agreed.
is a different set of uh, coordinates. So,
What
you
would
know,
be kind of interesting to see if we could have one of our friends that are that can remote read, if they could figure it out.
oh yeah, that would be amazing, because I mean, if we know what Google Earth can do, and we both know somebody that has matched Google Earth without using it, so I would
Absolutely.
really like to get her input.
Yeah.
So gnarly. Well, I would say here then the analysis from you, Mr. Barber, points in the direction you believe this is real. Barb, how do you feel about that?
Forrest Galante. He was on Joe Rogan's show and talking about the 50-foot. But I didn't watch it because that's not something that I would just go out of my way to watch. So, but now I'm interested. So, did either of you see that episode, and what did he say?
Yes, I am very familiar with Mr. Galante. I've tried to get him on the podcast. He's
Well, that'd be
actually
awesome.
responded. He's just super busy. Yeah, that would be beautiful. I believe from the understanding of everything that was presented, he just hit it on what Brian said, but then also just made some of the notes I said as well.
Gotcha. Okay. So, but it was about the same one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He pretty much was just saying that it's really interesting that there are supposed to be snakes there and all of the stuff Brian had touched base on. But then, yeah, he had just mentioned some people pointed out the difference in camera details. But then, like Brian was saying, they're looking at different images. So, yeah, there's a lot kind of going on there.
Yeah, that's the only, as far as this that I wanted, the only question I had. So thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, no, of course. Well, Mr. Barber, do you have anything else you'd like to touch base on this insane encounter you just spoke about?
It's one that blows my mind. Like I said, the fact that the original photo isn't the one that's circulating blows my mind. And the fact that, again, it's one of those things where nothing's clear cut. Do I think it was 50 feet? Maybe, but I'm tending more to be inclined with when they were showing the measurements of the trees and stuff. I mean, the Congo is not noted for the forestry, so I'm thinking more that I think it's a record, but I'm thinking more that 39-foot, 40-foot mark. Looking at what I can see, again, I'm no expert at satellite analysis, but I'm just not going to jump to the largest statistic right away because, according to the largest statistic, they were talking. It was ridiculous, like over 100 feet at one point. There was even a letter from an analysis back in 1961 that looked at that same photo, and they were talking that it was 150 feet. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. So, yeah, it's going to be a mystery. If they can get that color footage out, it'd solve it.
With those statistics, though, if you enter all that information, and 50 feet would not be out of the realm of a possibility, because if 150 feet is the, I guess, like max, right? From any reports or evidence or whatever. And then 100 feet there's been a couple of things I think you said, people that think it could be 100 feet. So 50 is like, now it's seeming like, all right, you know what? It probably is 50.
Yeah, it's not out of the question. That's for sure.
Wow.
And, most of what I could find were leaning toward him being right with closer to 49 feet. So you have basically a undocumented record.
Right? Wow. I don't know if I can top that, but I can stir the pot a little bit right here for you, because this next one, insanity as well. Where this occurred, technically anacondas aren't supposed to live, meaning where Brian had mentioned as well, same thing. Okay. Yet it is close enough where it's not out of the realm of possibility for an anaconda to venture over to this area. Okay. So let's make a mental note of this at that point in time before I dive into the El Diablo, devil, which again can be a loose translation for anything that they don't like to deal with. All right. Well, the normal locations for anacondas, we're going to start right here. You got the green anacondas that are mostly found in the Brazilian Amazon basin, Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Trinidad, and the Guanas. So yes, largely found in South America. But remember, you're going to hear some places now that weren't mentioned there. The yellow anaconda is found in Paraguay, southern Brazil, Bolivia, and northeastern Argentina. So, of course, they're going to be close to each other, but just like anything else, they're not going to try to overlap each other's territory. Then you have the Bini Bolivian anacondas that are limited to a very small part of Bolivia, hence the subterminology for it. And then you have the dark spotted anacondas that are found in Brazil and French Guiana. All right. So again, let's keep that in mind. Make a mental note here. What do anacondas really enjoy? Well, they're semi-aquatic, meaning they spend most of their time in or near water, which is pretty creepy. They are very adept swimmers and divers, and their eyes and nostrils are on the top of their heads. All right. So this allows them to easily stay submerged while they're waiting for prey. They have also been found on land in thick vegetation and in trees. So let's keep in mind here again, even though prefers water, right, does not mean it has to be fully aquatic right there. Before I now proceed into what occurred, do either one of you have any questions about that?
No, it's pretty clear, and I can't wait to hear about this.
No, I'm all ears on this one.
All right, cool. Well, again, I can barely speak English, so I will probably butcher a few of the pronunciations up in here. Information will be correct, though. We have December 1986, the Rio Congo, a Jamastron, Honduras / Nicaragua border. All right. So again, wait, Honduras and Nicaragua, we're going to be talking about a potential giant anaconda? Well, they're not supposed to live there. Okay. Very bizarre. We have the 27th Airborne Engineering Battalion from good old Fort Bragg, North Carolina. They are suddenly alerted to a suspected enemy craft or small boat that is making its way erratically up the river. As the soldiers quickly make their way over to the river in an attempt to gain cover and potentially ambush the approaching enemies. As the men get to a cattle farm near the shoreline, they quickly jump into the tree line 5 to 8 yards away from the water. Shortly after setting up their vantage points, the group of soldiers is baffled to see an enormous 2 to 3 foot wide snakehead slowly emerging from the swampy water. As soon as the entire snake had left the water, the soldiers realized they were looking at what seemed to be a 40 to 50 foot long snake. Being told to stand down by command, the soldiers just sat in silence and watched as this enormous snake darted towards a group of cows, barreling them over and taking its head to smash one before completely devouring the largest cow it had just beat up. As fast as the giant snake had appeared, the creature quickly bolted back towards the nearby water and vanished into the murky swamp. And yes, they call this El Diablo, the giant anaconda. What we just read to you earlier about the documented locations, well, my final little piece of this is giant anaconda-like snakes have been found in Venezuela, French Guiana, Paraguay, Guyana, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, Brazil, Trinidad, Honduras, Nicaragua, and then, yes, the Everglades in the good old Florida, US of A. Well, Miss Barb, what do you think about that before we get Brian's take?
I always love an encounter of when there's anybody that, is serving our country, because they're the testimonies that I think have, some of the most integrity, right, of any people that I can speak to. They're going to be no nonsense. This is not going to be something that there's no reason to exaggerate. They're not going to do that. They're not given to that. So I think it's that in itself really holds like a lot of weight for me, in the judgment. So I think, and also when they're seeing this happen, they're part of their jobs are to determine, a threat and how close to to you is that threat? What is the size of that threat? Things like that. So they would also be able to accurately determine how large this thing is. So that's all I have to say. I think you know, I would tend to believe it.
So this was Fort Bragg, and where's Bragg is where again?
That is where the group of people were from, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. But
Okay, as far as is a snake that's not supposed to be there capable of being there, let's take a look at that real quick.
look at the border right there. I mean, why is Nicaragua and Honduras off limits when all of a sudden it's in all the surrounding areas? Same type of environment, pretty much same area. Yeah.
Yeah, and not only that, who's to say something didn't happen where it's obviously if they're in the surrounding area, they're probably there too, because if, like you said, if the environment's right, even if it's a so-called invasive species, you know, look at the invasive species aspect. Look at Florida now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Burmese python's native to Indonesia, you know, in Southeast Asia. Do you know what the record for the Burmese python is?
I do
Without
not.
look for the Burmese python, which is native to Southeast Asia and Indonesia, is 19 feet and was caught in Florida. I mean, what's that tell you as far as environment and where a species can thrive? You know, the heaviest one's 403 pounds, but
Yikes.
just because it's not doesn't belong there doesn't mean it can't meet record sizes. So again, you got the perfect environment. You've got food, you've got heat, you've got water for it to cool down to regulate body temperature. You know, I know anacondas grow fairly quick. I believe it's something like 6 to 8 foot in the first year if you power feed them.
Yeah,
And
that's where
then
they
they
grow
live
the
like,
most. Yeah.
and then they live somewhere between, I think it's 20 to 30 years. So imagine even a foot a year is not uncommon. You know, more like first couple of years, it's like a foot to 2 foot a year after that first year. But if it's eating cows and got that amount of food, hey, who's to say it can't reach 50 feet in within that lifespan? And you've got trained observers.
The whole like symbolism though behind it with what is El Diablo? Is that what?
Yes.
Yeah. And what is going on? What really is going on there? Because if they need to feed this snake and it has like a pattern, because I think Brian had said they are creatures of patterns,
Yes.
so they know when this thing is going to come, and they have to be prepared for it, because it probably, if it doesn't get its way, it's probably going to go, it could go really bad. So that then I think, is this some sort of like a supernatural being, or is this an actual flesh and blood creature?
For the locals, I think it probably could be both.
Yes.
Yeah.
You've got the military there, and not only are you looking at the aspects of, you know, why were they told to stand down? I mean, if you open fire on foreign territory,
Right.
Yes.
that's a big problem.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and who knows, maybe in that area it's known through the dark unknown pages or whatever you want to call it, through closed channels, that's a symbol to them. That's one of their favorites. You know, there was an issue with one of the a 25 footer had been unalived, and the locals were really upset about it because it was an animal that they actually fed.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And some poachers had come in and taken it.
Oh.
You know, just unalived it and didn't even take the snake. It was just unalived, and so the villagers were really tore up because that was a symbol to them. So maybe you've got the same thing here, where it's like, hey, no, this is not necessarily a pet, but you're gonna, not only are you gonna be firing on foreign territory, but then we're gonna have to explain this to the public.
At first, I was wondering to myself, why would they stand down? Because they could have easily smoked it. But then I had some people break it down to me that are involved in the military and law enforcement. Like actually, my buddy Drewski was explaining that. Just again, thought about this in my head real quick, because that's something I would like to cover here at some point as well. The Kadar or Kandir giants. Well, I had heard about how over in the Middle East, at points in time, the villagers will dye their hair and also their beards like a red color, which is what is reported to be with the giants. And they'll also do that to certain goats as if it's a potential offering. You had mentioned that about maybe do they leave the cattle there purposely to appease this thing? Just felt maybe that'd be some interesting information to spread to.
Yes, that's the Kandahar giant. That is very interesting. We'll definitely have to cover that in a future episode. Definitely.
Oh, definitely, because I have a little inside info on that one.
This is excellent. No, we will definitely be covering that for sure. That's on, my to-do list, whether Barb covers it first or we cover it here. It's definitely going to get covered. Yet we still have a couple things to chat about. Barb, you had I guess, in your vision, the unfortunate events to witness some of these giant snake videos that were sent to you. Well, we already know how you feel about snakes. Yet when you witness these videos, which we will have the links in the good old description, how do you feel about those?
Well, first of all, we'll talk about the one Forest Galante. Is that right? That's
yes,
right?
It is.
Okay, so this video is he's talking, and he is talking about being in a cave that is this massive cave, and the guy falls like in all the way like up past his head in bat guano, and yeah, and so, and then he finds the shed skin of over 30. So that the snake's bigger. I want to say 30 or 40. The skin. So that this snake is over 30 feet. So that's pretty wild. So that was the first one. And I can't remember which one of you guys said that this cave, I think you did, Kenny, this cave was the same cave did somebody see a huge snake?
Yeah, Dr. Brady Barr got his butt cheeks bit, and that was actually Mr. Barber that brought up that excellent observation. Yes.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah. So what happened with that? Because I've never heard about that.
So he was down in that cave because that's supposed to be the legendary cave of giant reticulated pythons, and he went in that cave, and at the time he was up about chest level, and I'll use the layman's term, bat crap, and turned around and I can't remember if he saw the snake, grabbed it, but he couldn't find the head, and the snake and all the bat crap swung around and bit him on the butt cheeks. And it lacerated him pretty badly. I mean, he got an infection from it. He was laid up for quite a bit.
Wow.
But it was the same cave, and he was looking for the same legendary over 30-foot snakes that are supposed to be in there.
Wow. So there's really something going on in this cave. Wow.
Yeah, because like I mentioned, if it got the right temperature and all the conditions are right, I mean, you got to be crazy to want to go through. If you're 6 feet tall and you're up to your bottom of your chest in bat crap, who's going to go looking for you?
And then other guy said that, the other one, he actually, the bat guano was so deep. Yeah, it went over his head.
Over his head.
Yeah, I know. Blech. Right? So what do you think about this? Brian? Did you see the video?
Yeah.
What did you think?
I think they're down there. The record's 33 feet for a reticulated python.
Whoa.
So
if
there's one that big, there's always one bigger.
Like with your knowledge, because you do have a lot of knowledge about reticulated pythons. What do you estimate if the skin is 30 feet? What do you estimate that it could potentially, the size of that snake now?
Depending on how old it was, but if the skin's 30, that means that when they shed their skin, it's because the skin is too tight and they're, they've outgrown it. So it's longer than 30.
Yeah. So what would you
And
think though that it would, what would your, your like guesstimate be?
once it's shed, I
Yeah.
mean, it could be, if the skin was, we'll say 31 feet, maybe 31 feet 3 inches. It's not like it's a grape
Okay.
waiting to explode. It's
Oh,
just
okay.
uncomfortable and something like
Yeah.
that.
So it's obviously, it's a little bit, it's 30, but it could be 30 feet, 6 inches. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's
Which isn't
something.
really a major, yeah. Still
Yeah,
pretty,
it's
that's
just,
pretty darn big, but
well,
it's not going to go from 30 to 50.
yeah, and let's say the snake's 20 years old, it could still grow another 10 years,
Oh yeah.
and it's 6 inches a year. That's another, 5 feet.
How old are they when they like stop? First of all, what is their life expectancy typically?
Retics are between 25 and 30,
Okay.
given the right
Oh,
care. In
okay.
the wild, probably 20 to 25.
Oh wow. Okay, that's really
Yeah,
long.
but they
Wow.
reach maturity within 4 years.
Okay. So is that when they stop growing then?
No, they never stop growing.
Really?
They have what's called
Oh,
indeterminate growth.
oh, whoa. You did say that, but I wasn't thinking about that because I didn't know that. So they literally could continue to grow given the right conditions.
Yep.
Wow.
The
Wow.
growth may slow exponentially,
Uh-huh.
to
Yeah.
2 or 3 inches a year, but it's still going to
Still.
continue growing.
Yeah. That's wild. Wow. Kenny, do you have any, do you, I assume you watched the video. What did you think?
That's all great stuff right there. I've been aware of a lot of this giant snake activity for quite a long time. Just haven't really had a chance to cover it. And then, yeah, I did get a chance to check those out when Mr. Barber sent them earlier. One of the last things I would like to mention, stir the pot a bit. What if I told you up in Westbrook, Maine, there was an anaconda that got verified? What would you both say to that?
Escape pet.
That's same. That's what I was thinking.
All right. Well, there was one that had been set loose, and it was called Wessie, and it is actually in the Cryptozoology Museum in Portland, Maine. I will not say the gentleman's name. It's very easy to find him. Either way, though, he has a skin in there that was found in Westbrook's Central Park area, and also two police officers saw this anaconda eating a beaver down near an old factory. Yet, once winter came about and such, no one ever saw this animal or snake again. It's been quite a long time. Obviously, it was somebody's pet, but again, right up here in good old Maine, it was able to survive for a summer.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that if it hadn't have been such a harsh change, what's happening with the Burmese is they are moving north. And
Mm-hmm.
so are the other constrictors that are down there. And I imagine anaconda would be in that category, because what's happening is even though Florida gets somewhat cold, the snakes are adapting. And so only the hardier snakes are surviving the winters. And they're learning to actually go into almost a type of hibernation
Mm-hmm.
during short periods. So you're getting stronger and more cold tolerant snakes being bred. It's kind of like the whole, we're creating our own evolution by, them being in America, the same way the rattlesnake roundups. Rattlesnakes don't like to rattle anymore because of the fact all the ones that rattled get picked up.
Yep. They've actually been
So now
growing now without the rattlers. I believe it was Coyote Peterson has seen a bunch of those.
so yes, I don't think
Really?
you'll ever get to the point where you're going to find them in Maine on a regular basis. Being an immortal vampire maybe, but not in my lifetime.
Right. It was just like you said, summer, even up here in the Northeast, is still summer, meaning, sure, it didn't necessarily get as hot, but it went right to the local river system that is pretty nasty. But either way, it was down there eating beavers and stuff. So, yeah, straight up bizarre. Well, as we are starting to tie up this creepy conversation, as always, is there anything else both of you excellent minds would like to mention, touch base on before we let everyone get going?
I just wanted to talk about this video that we all saw, that this huge king cobra snake attacks this poor woman that's just like standing along the street, like cooking her barbecue meal, and this thing purposely like was across the street, and it's like, oh, here I come for you, lady, and it was like booked its way over and then attacked her. I just didn't think that they had that sort of personality, I guess,
Didn't you ever
like
hear
that.
Ricky Tikki Tavi?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, with the mongoose, right? I remember that in school, but isn't that what that's all about? Those like
Yeah,
slying cobras that were just purposely trying to be invasive, it seems.
yeah. That was wild. What did you guys think of that? What did you think about that, Brian?
It reminded me of, this is one of the reasons I got out of snakes. The main one was when my son started being able to, because I also had a couple cottonmouths and a couple diamondbacks. And when I caught him almost opening the diamondback rattlesnake cage, all the snakes went.
Oh my God, yeah.
But at one point, I had a juvenile reticulated python. It was maybe 3 feet long and got out. Couldn't find it like for 3 or 4 months. Finally find it, put it back in the cage, gets out again. I find it, it starts biting me, snapping, whole 9 yards. It's not happy. I put it back in the cage. Gets out again, biting, whole 9 yards. I'm like, I am not dealing with this. So I took it to a pet store and, sold it. And it was, I think it had been 10 years later. The same pet store was in business, and I was looking for, my son wanted to get into the chameleon. So I thought, oh, let's go check, with this person. And we were talking, and they're like, hey, you're the one that sold us that retic. And I'm like, yeah. And they go, oh, man, we take that to the school functions. It's just the nicest snake.
Wow.
And I'm like, man, you guys must have really worked with it. That's awesome. And I said, can I see it? And they're like, yeah. And I walked in, and they had it in a big, glass cage. And as soon as it picked its head up, saw me, and smacked the cage.
Yeah, I didn't like you, dude.
Everybody
What
in
the
that room
heck?
jumped back. And they're like, that has never done that. I said, it remembers me.
Oh my gosh. And that it disliked, like, see, there again, I didn't think that they would harbor this resentment over all these years and it would even remember you. They're very intelligent. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
It was a good thing the 17-footer outlasted the girlfriend, because every time it would get out, she didn't like the snake, and it would sniff like her trail where she'd been through the house every time it would get out.
Gosh. Oh.
So they pick their head up. They know who's coming in. If it's a stranger,
Wow.
not only can they smell you, but, pythons have the same thing with certain other snakes, heat sensors, so they can get like a thermal vision of you.
Oh.
So be careful, folks. That little garter snake, if it nips you once and you let it go.
See that? Oh no, because that's one thing. Like, I'm not afraid of them at all. And they eat slugs, which are my mortal enemy. Like slugs.
Yeah,
useless.
The proper snakes in the proper environment are good for the environment. It's just like any other ecosystem.
Yeah.
But when somebody messes up, like the pet shop that got hit by Andrew,
oh,
now you've got a nightmare down there because of that pet shop in Florida.
Right.
That's how it started, right?
I didn't know that.
When I think it was 92 when Andrew went through, there was a pet store. And this whole thing started with 100 baby pythons that got thrown into the Everglades. And it was about 10 years later, all of a sudden these giant snakes start showing up.
Oh, 100.
And Burmese pythons will lay up to 16 or 60 eggs per clutch. And they'll lay that two or three times a year.
So the math, oh my gosh, how that population could completely explode.
Yeah, they're estimating over 100,000 now in Florida. There's more in Florida than there is anywhere else in the world. The rest of the world's protected.
That's wild. And what do they? Okay, so they bite you. They're venomous, right? Or no?
No, it's pure constriction. About 100 pounds per square inch.
Okay, but you said all they need to do is get that like one coil around and they can, is that
What
one?
once they throw a coil around you,
Yeah.
it's you're done.
Wow.
Unless you can
So
get it by the tail and unwrap it.
that is very, very, very dangerous. Yeah. That's alarming.
Yikes. Yes, it is super alarming. Well, to the audience, I hope you did get a little bit of your fix for some Camp Nightmare fuel. Is there anything else, Barb and Brian, you'd like to touch base on tonight?
No, I think
Same.
Well, excellent stuff. Make sure to the audience you go over and check out Barb Hartman's thread, which will be up in the good old description. Also, make sure to head over to Bigfoot's Barbershop. He's going to be up in the description as well. They both cover excellent topics, and I think you will enjoy what they churn out. You can also check out our previous playlist because Barb is a bi-weekly host. Yes, and Mr. Barber is a weekly host times 2. So you will be hearing from all of us very soon. Yet, for the moment, this will be the conclusion of the meeting of Camp Nightmare Fuel for the evening. Barb, thanks for hanging out tonight with us.
Thanks for having me, but it's our show, so I guess you don't have a choice now.
Yes.
We always have such a good time.
Excellent. I love it right there. Mr. Barber.
No, I appreciate it, and thank you guys for letting me come play with the cool kids now.